morning from Lake George, New York. This is our hotel where we stayed last night after an awesome day of Ticonderoga and walking around town a little bit. It is morning. We are going to head out and enjoy all the history that the area has to offer, go on another adventure, bringing you guys along. Can't wait. But yeah, so I'm pretty tired today. However, we have a lot to get to and it's going to be really fun. It's going to be another beautiful day. And see all the flowers on the trees? Yeah, my allergies are in high gear. By the way, we walked 5.5 miles yesterday, which is fantastic, especially after sitting in the car for, over 3.5 hours. So let's get out there and have some fun. All right, checked out, did meet the owners. Very, very nice. They've done a lot of work to make it what it is, and we thank them for, giving us a decent place that we found to stay in the area, because most of the places, a little more old school rundown. That place was very clean. It's nice to support a young couple working hard to better a historic town, so that was cool. Even she said I got a good rate though, so I guess that $100 we got is not typical. That was some sort of a special off-season flash sale, the second party thing that they're kind of using to figure out their algorithm for pricing. But she said good on us, and I definitely would seek out those deals again because it was great. And look how centrally located. I mean, there is the water, and there behind this restaurant here is the hotel, so excellent. Hubbardton Hill? King of the Hill's coming back, by the way, you guys. I'm so excited. Another beautiful, beautiful day. There's a breeze, but it is sunny and glorious. Headed over to the fort. What? The fort? Yeah, they opened at 9:30. It's 10 o'clock. By the time we got Starbucks, got ready, well, Kay went and got me Starbucks. What a nice guy. I was like, listen, if I'm gonna do this being survive, I need coffee. So he brought Starbucks and I got ready and kind of talked to the owners for a while, took our time. It's nice. We're like on a little vacation. Right, here we go. Fort William Henry. Built in 1755 by the British. It was sort of the answer to, all of the French forts like Carillon up the way. And this part of New York was dotted with forts, both French and British. And, again, being strategically placed near the entrance to Canada and disputed lands, such as what is now Vermont, and all of the waterways and lakes, everybody wanted their piece of the pie. So this was built by the British. And in 1757, there was a horrible siege and massacre that took place here. Robert Rogers was here with Rogers Rangers. Robert Rogers, born in Methuen, Mass., eventually moved to what is Dumbarton, New Hampshire. Moved around a little bit throughout Mass and New Hampshire. He's kind of a Mass boy, kind of a New Hampshire boy. I kind of alluded to Robert Rogers and his infamy. Part of that is, he was a badass, and he had a very interesting way of fighting. He trained his men very, very well to position themselves kind of the way that a Native American would, knowing how to fight behind walls, behind trees, through trenches. And we have the Army Rangers because of them. They were the precursor to the Army Rangers, the baddest of the badasses. And Robert Rogers, infamous for being a fierce fighter. Later on, during the Revolutionary War, he would decide to, in the end, side with the British. He does end up going to England and kind of living a life of obscurity. He became an alcoholic. It's very sad. And he did die over there. At one point, his brother actually was here and died. And today we're going to tell a lot of stories. Some of them are going to be really brutal. Robert Rogers' brother, his body was actually mutilated and mangled by the local Indian population and treated very poorly. So even in death, sometimes there was no peace. So that brings me to 1757 and the siege. The British were besieged here. The French came upon them. Horrible, horrible loss of life, a massacre. Basically, they came in and the British, which we would have been on that side at the time, so we surrendered, made up a deal. British generals Monroe and Webb and the French and the Indians, and we said, all right, just because there was a lot of, not just men, but women and children, families living in and around the fort. And they said, we will surrender, but please peaceably let us go. Definitely the women and the children. You can take some of our officers and things like that. But, they had a whole formal agreement. And the siege went on for 6 days. They had the agreement, and then the agreement was broken. And sadly, the native population is largely made up of Huron warriors, decided to take it upon themselves to just commit total genocide and a bloodbath. It was a complete massacre in every sense of the word. And it's really hard to talk about, the atrocities that happened here, but they scalped people, tortured them, mutilated their most intimate parts of themselves. I want to keep this kid friendly and as simple without being too detailed as I can. Just imagine like the very worst things that you could do to another person. And that's what happened even to the women and children. And I'm sure that, we'll talk about that in here and we're going to learn more, but it's an eerie place. A lot of loss, a lot of sadness, and they have actually done extensive archaeological research on the area and have confirmed and found bodies that were tortured, some of them when they were alive, some of them afterwards, and people had been mutilated, beheaded, scalped, all manner of grotesque treatment towards other human beings. Sadly, that's part of the heritage of this place. Now this is a rebuilt fort. You can see it kind of almost looks like classic Americana Lincoln logs. I sort of love it, but we're gonna go inside of the museum and we'll probably have the place to ourselves, which is cool. We're gonna explore and we're gonna learn more. Hopefully we get some lighter notes. All right, let's go. As we head in, I like what I see already. This is like retro fort goodness. Let's check it out. And again, if you have read the fantastic novel or watched the beautiful movie, which incredible music score, by the way, The Last of the Mohicans, that siege that I was talking about is portrayed in that movie. There's some historical inaccuracies, but all in all, pretty darn good. Yeah, Rogers Rangers, there we go. And they definitely were wearing buckskin. They were, from the wilds of New England, and these guys were fierce, and you can see he's got a green beret on. Here we go, Massachusetts militiamen. We know what they look like. And here we have a sergeant from the 44th Regiment of Foot. I am already totally digging this. Also have things going on. I know that they do, because I've been following them for a long time. They show The Last of the Mohicans outside on a big screen, and during the battle scenes they fire cannons and set off muskets, and so they have like a musket fire and the cannons booming along with the movie, which honestly sounds pretty amazing. Wow, okay. Father Isaac Goges. He traveled from France to Quebec and converted a lot of the native population, the Huron tribes, to Catholicism. In 1642, he was captured by a Mohawk war party and imprisoned for around 10 months. During that time, he was tortured His thumbs were cut off by the Mohawk, and the tribe believed that without those 4 fingers, he would not be able to summon evil spirits they associated with this foreign religion, being Catholicism. He was ransomed to a pair of Dutch traders who provided him enough money to travel back to France. That is not the kind of adventure that I would want to be having. How about you guys? I'm telling you, the theme here again is going to be America, hard fought and trials and tribulations. Before we even get to the revolution, so many things happened. It's a portrayal of his fingers getting cut off. He looks awfully calm, considering that they are taking digits.
It's kind of like the era is slightly like the same era as like Muffler Man.
Yes, exactly.
See,
that's
exactly
exactly
what
it.
I'm saying?
Yes.
So there's a similar, inexpensive quality to it. Well, he also went on to do a boatload of illustrations. And what they would do is they would give him literally an artifact and say, Jack, give me an illustration of this artifact in use. So he's got all of these, and I've got more. We've got probably 30 or more to get out. So we're getting them framed, matted and framed up and put out. We actually have a Jack Binder exhibit going up on the 2nd floor.
That's amazing.
That'll be coming out soon. So that's where a lot of that comes from. So when this place was built in the 50s, it was built to preserve the history, but it was also, we need to make some money, right? Because they weren't a not-for-profit. We never have been.
Right.
Still, we're a for-profit museum, which is a little odd for a museum.
I get it.
But so they would, this was an early tourist destination. This is one of the first, road trips people did was Lake George. And and basically when this place was built, Storytown was built, which is, are you local?
We live in New Hampshire.
Oh, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Storytown is now the Great Escape.
Yeah.
So when you go to the Great Escape and you look at the Alice in Wonderland, that was Binder too.
Yep.
And so he worked
Makes
there,
sense.
and then he worked for Charlie Wood, and then he went to work for Walt. Down in Orlando for Disney, and he did some of their work as well.
I was going to say his name sounds vaguely familiar, and we are Disney adults, so don't judge me too harshly on that.
Adults.
But kind of deep into the nerd stuff of, we've even been to Marceline to see where Walt was from and all that. And I love kind of the roadside, fun, funky stuff. But during the 50s, kids were running around with little guns and coonskin cabs, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone. Those shows were huge.
Apparently, not only did we have oxen here on site, we had a panther out by the road to draw tourists in.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I would love to time travel back to that. That's amazing.
And when we did our ribbon cutting last year to kick off our 70th year of operation, Kathy Munsell, who is our CEO here, she had gone through some minutes from whatever board meetings, and the old carriage house, which they called Towers Hall for a long time, which is now this beautifully renovated affair, but they had taken out the attic floorboards to help build the museum. So we're standing on the floorboards of Towers Hall from the attic level, and I think that's pretty neat. Here
that's cool. That's very cool.
But
dang.
Yeah,
it's different. we go all over and go to forts and go to historic sites. This has a charm all its own.
And it's one of the things I like to. I'm trying to embrace here.
It's kind of like not. Have you been to Knott's Berry Farm?
Oh golly, not for forever.
It's kind of like they've got they have a replica of Independence Hall that they actually used in the National Treasure movie. And the ghost town and stuff is very much like this feeling, and they've got the audio animatronics that are that's pan for gold, all that kind of kitschy, very stereotypically American goodness. They would load in their station wagon.
Yep.
And, little Johnny and Sally would go with mom and dad, and, they were kind of coming out of the boomer generation. And now those people are all older, but I think younger people are starting to appreciate kind of the beauty of all that in America in the heyday. So
this place is such a family affair.
Yeah.
Basically, Bob Flack Sr. took over from his father-in-law who was part of the Fort William Henry Corporation to preserve the land and whatnot. And then, you know, his daughter and son, actually daughters and son, all worked here in various capacities.
That's cool.
And then, you know, and Kathy is now our president, or CEO rather. They would always give the natives excellent spoils of war. So there was a slave trade, there was all the plunder they could carry, and there were also some very deep-seated cultural beliefs that, you know, scalping and flaying and torturing your enemies, you know, was a good thing, and you would take their power and whatnot. So anyway, they're really upset that this happened. One column is, no, you know, you'll be fine. And off they go. And they, whether it's communications or just they were, you know, pissed off about it, they attack and they capture and murder and plunder. Then they come back here and do the same exact thing. The French burn the place to the ground because they're heading back north. They're not going to stick around to try and hold the fort. They've exhausted, you know, a good bit of their supplies. It's quite away from Fort Ticonderoga, which is now Fort Ticonderoga. But you know, but that's why the massacre happened. It was just part of the deal, and the Native Americans were going to live up to their end of the bargain, and it was very much part of what they did.
Yeah, and I really think, I mean, from everything that I've read and that I know, it seems like they just did it because they were like, we're not going to listen. I mean, as much as it was the French and Indian War, at the end of the day, both parties did what they wanted to do.
Absolutely.
And it was like they're driving, they're like, nope, we're still doing this.
They're using each other.
The French, what could they do at that
point?
They're
very openly using each other, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic information, really fun, very nice staff so far here. Very, very, everybody that we've talked to, even though some of them just brief, like, very nice. And, you know, sometimes when people are talking, I'll try to make a point to show other things in the room and not the person talking, because not everybody necessarily wants to be on YouTube. But I showed this, but this is a display of information and artifacts from Rogers Rangers. You can see right there, New Hampshire Regiment, commissioned as a captain, experienced woodman, Native American fighter. He was tasked with recruiting 50 men to serve as a regiment scout company. Robert Rogers, of course, was not Native American himself. He was Scottish. They were very successful, his regiment. Got the attention of everybody for his badassery. They were paid directly by King George. Oh, another thing that's cool about Robert Rogers, you know, we hear a lot, you know, particularly in dealing with people like Benedict Arnold that we talked about yesterday, of people during these wars not getting paid or their recognition. Robert Rogers, his men were loyal to him, and well, men were also loyal to people like, you know, Nathaniel Greene, we recently talked about, or, you know, George Washington, or any of them. You know, it wasn't guaranteed you were going to get paid. Robert Rogers paid his men, and he paid them on time, and he made sure that they felt respected. Even as gruff as he was and as fierce as their fighting was, he was known to be, if you were loyal to him, he was loyal to you. And I think that that is really good for morale, and I'm sure it definitely helped, you know, especially during difficult times as they were in. So this says, you know, standing orders still used by American Special Forces troops today, and the U.S. Army Rangers considers themselves, you know, the spiritual home coming from Robert's Rangers. Like I told you guys. See, I don't steer you guys wrong. They put down Pontiac's rebellion later on, the Native uprising in Ohio, and they were disbanded shortly thereafter. And that is when Robert Rogers went rogue and became kind of a mercenary for hire. And then a kind of a two-time and no good during the Rev War. But once upon a time, you know, he did what needed to be done and was again the man for the time for the man. So, all right, here is some muskets, albeit terrible. And again, you guys know, you pretty much aimed them where you could and hoped that you would shoot something with those boys. I can tell you, they're very, very heavy. Some more retro goodness here in the signage. This place just feels like an adventure. So I'm headed downstairs. Oh, is great. So cool. And just so you guys know, as much as I know about this place and have studied it and like loved it for a very long time, we've never been inside. We've only been on the outside of this place. So you guys are experiencing my reaction first time here with me. It's weird that I've never been here. And I can see already that this is going to be a place that I really like. Oh no. What is happening to this guy? Musket ball with teeth marks. Amputation. Soldiers would be instructed to bite the bullet to ease the pain. So that's where that term comes from. And you can see him right there, literally biting the bullet. I would need more than a bullet. I would need a dram, if not several, of some nice stiff whiskey. At least. Preferably general anesthesia. But guess what? They didn't have it. Yeah, this is awesome. Original fireplace from 1755. Wow. Original. Okay. From talking to that gentleman upstairs, it turns out that my whole notion of this place being kind of like Disney, Knott's Berry Farm, kitschy 50s, it was right on point. And at least now we got the backstory as to why. It was a comic book artist and creator that came in and did a lot of the imagery and art and figures in this place. And he loved that kind of thing himself. And they have just kept it and are kind of just rolling with it. And I, for one, hope that it never changes.
Because he built these characters.
Yeah, he built these by hand. Seriously amazing. The lighting is cool. So sadly, they found 10 bodies down here in the 50s, skeletons of folks that had died. And there you can see. Oh, and 3 more in 95. I like how the guy is in costume as he digs around. That's super weird. Ugh. My goodness. The past does talk, you guys. It absolutely talks. I have to come back and bring Nathan and Noah. Noah in particularly loves 1950s retro and like Davy Crockett and Indian and Daniel Boone stuff.
Water used to be up to the fort before they built the walls.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It was like out on the water. See, that's one thing that's cool about Fort Ti, where we were yesterday. It still is like that. Like, it's not hard to imagine. The terrain hasn't changed that much. And it's not built up around it. Whereas here, we're in a town that's touristy now, and it's built up. So you have to use a little bit more imagination. Though, look how cool this is. I love that whole, it's kind of like my wardrobe inspiration sometimes. So I don't know if you guys may have noticed that I dress kind of something between 40s, 50s, and colonial. I like to span the times, and it's kind of like I don't want to not wear makeup, and I like kind of having the retro vibe, but I also love the colonial, and so it looks like I'm not alone, like someone else gets it. I don't see a whole lot of ladies. Okay, so here, like, that is definitely like the 50s version of a colonial era woman. Those gals there, like, I love honestly that. Even better than like I hoped or thought it would be.
Here's the carpenter shop.
Watercraft. There's a canoe.
The only thing to make these better if they're in a trunk moving around.
I fell out of a canoe at Girl Scout camp once. Fun fact. Oh, I love this.
So they found these artifacts.
So these are real artifacts. They were discovered during an archaeological excavation conducted in 1953 under the supervision of archaeologist Stanley Gifford. of course, in colonial times, carpenters and blacksmiths. Very important because everything had to be made. I mean, you could get things from England and France, but it was expensive. And if they were your enemy at the time, you didn't want to get stuff from those countries, depending on whose side you're on. Stationed at Fort William mainly did not consist of regular soldiers. These men were largely from the colonies of Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. They enlisted to protect their homes and family members. The Provincial Army lacked experience and discipline of a highly trained British regular. Many of the British officers who inspected Fort William Henry often noted the poor conditions and lack of discipline. Oh, that's not good. When the provincial troops had downtime, many soldiers used this time for their own leisure. Many soldiers resided from deeply religious areas and sought to reaffirm their faith by reading the Bible or praying in their free time. That's a good way to spend your time. Throughout the war, religion was present on each side, as priests often accompanied the soldiers during the campaign season.
John Bush is the most famous one, this guy.
John Bush, the most notable soldier, resided at Fort William Henry. His father, George Bush, was an ex-slave from South America? Yeah. Who owned a farm in Massachusetts. When war broke out, John and his two older brothers were some of the earliest to enlist. Oh, wow. Garrisoned at Fort William Henry, John Bush rose to popularity among the other provincial troops for his powder horn carving skills. Oh my gosh, my new best friend. With steady hands, he mastered the art of engraving designer powder horns. His designs are so popular, he carved powder horns for several prestigious officers. So, you know, I always talk about powder horns and how personal they are and how people have time to do it. I believe I've touched on this before. Sometimes people were not so skilled and you could hire an artist. I can't remember where I was, but I think I've told you guys that before. So it looks like this John Bush was one such person. And yeah, created one for Israel Putnam. That's amazing. Unfortunately, little known is about the fate of John Bush. It is speculated that he was captured during the massacre and died while being transported to France to be sold into slavery. Oh, crap. That's not good. Today, his designs are highly desirable. Many of his carvings travel across the world. Some have been sold for thousands of dollars. John Bush, we see you. We appreciate you. I don't like the ending to his story. That sucks. Provincial camp. After the battle, William Johnson instructed a fort to be built by British engineer Captain William Eyre. It was built. 2,000 men worked 16-hour shifts to complete it. And Fort William Henry was completed. The way, I can't remember what made me think of this, but you know, we were talking about the massacre and how bad it was and the way that people were killed and how bodies were desecrated and stuff like that. Well, some people were also tortured in a way that basically the Indians stripped them of their clothes or made them strip their clothes and were sent off into the wilderness, so they died slower deaths due to exposure and starvation. And they have also found evidence of that in the woods within miles around the area, either which way, bodies that were not clothed and were in really poor condition. And it's really hard to talk about, makes you really sad what people do to other people. But it happened and we have to talk about it. And about the retreat out of here, you know, like I said, some are stripped and made to just starve and die, you know, of hypothermia. And some were teased. They were given some clothes and some provision, and then were later caught. I mean, these warriors were basically toying with them, just kind of having fun of it. Which, like, is your conscience that seared? Really terrible to think of. And, you know, you guys don't need to come at me with comments about, you know, this or that. I'm giving you the facts, and that is what happened here. Didn't happen everywhere, but I know for a fact 1757, that is the way it went down here, unprovoked, women and children as well, and it's absolutely horrible. But my goodness, this is awesome. Into these rooms at first, I think that these people are real. It's kind of a jump scare. Housekeeping on the frontier, yep. I wouldn't be able to escape it. Even then, I would be doing what mommies do best. Dishes, teaching the young ones, cleaning, mopping, all that stuff that I'm not doing right now because I'm on vacation. But I will tonight when we get home. because that's how we roll. I do get help, don't worry. But it's mostly all me. I don't mind. Just saying. Oh, and he's got his Black Watch tartan on. All right, so the Black Watch tartan, that is the green and blue you see over and over again at these historic sites. That is worn by the Black Watch Regiment with deep ties to Clan Campbell, and it is also an official Clan Campbell tartan. There are other variants of the Clan Campbell tartan within the same color palette, but militarily it is called Black Watch, and that is what they use. They have a long history in America and Scotland and England, and is used to this day by some of the military. Wow. Those are some big... They're talking about the War of Jenkins' Ear.
29-pounders and 4 6-pounders.
We talked about that when we were in Savannah.
The War of Jenkins' Ear, kind of an unusual war. It started when...
Poor Robert Jenkins.
Jenkins
Yep.
went to Parliament one day, and he explained that he had his ear severed earlier in the 1730s down in the Caribbean when a Spanish Coast Guard vessel stopped his merchant ship. He was interrogated, his ear was cut off.
Yep.
Thus, that was the catalyst for this naval war between Spain and Britain.
Yeah, and they were fighting for Spanish Florida and land grabs and trying to figure all of that out. This is so awesome.
Retro-ish.
It is.
Look at these.
Oh, I love that. That they just embrace it. Like even their new signage, they're keeping it retro. So cool. See how Lake George sits in comparison to Lake Champlain, and Fort Ti being right there, quite literally the place between two waters, which is what Ticonderoga means in Iroquois. Brilliant. War Club. No thanks. See, they hang stuff to dry.
The center's open for the smoke to go out.
Yeah, yeah. I am fascinated by the native cultures. It's so interesting. Different animal pelts that would have been used. My job to get the water too?
Yeah,
How am I supposed to dig it from down there? I'm so little.
you just gotta rope it up.
Why do I have to do everything?
Because it's your job.
What?
We have to go out and hunt.
Can't I just make you a sandwich?
No, we need fresh, clean water to drink.
I have to do everything. I don't like this. Is this my punishment for not getting the water?
Yes.
That's not nice. Let me out. I don't think I'd be. Gosh, they were out here for hours in the sun.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling. No. I can't. No, I like to stay milky white. This sucks. Okay. George Monroe, Colonel George Monroe, commander of the 35th Regiment of Foot of the British Army. Born in 1700 in Ireland, and by the way, Monroe, a Scottish name. Been born in Northern Ireland, I'm guessing. Could have been Ireland. Could have been the Republic. I mean, it wasn't the Republic. He survived. He goes to Albany. He dies of a heart attack. 1757. It was probably from the Surrey stressed. You need some blood thinners, some cholesterol reducers. Take a deep breath. I'd like to go back and tell him, don't trust them. Seriously, could you imagine, like, living with that kind of blunder? Oh. You know what they say about the seaweed? It's always greener, except some of that seaweed's brown. Look at them up there, fishing away. This is really cool. On these grounds, men from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire lived, fought, and died protecting the British colonies They endured disease, hardship caused by weather, lack of supplies, enemy attacks, and the loneliness of being away from home. Because of the courage and determination of these small groups of outnumbered patriots, the enemy advance in 1757 was delayed and ultimately stopped. News of the siege and surrender massacre at the fort united the British colonies in determined effort to defeat the French forces in North America. And in 1763, the Treaty of Paris was signed. This exhibit honors the people who defended our country since those early struggles for freedom. Many men and women serving in our armed forces today, direct descendants of the men who helped found our nation. Whether you served in war or peace, we'll never forget your sacrifice of time with family and friends for missing important events such as anniversaries or your child's first day at school, having to grow up a little too fast, or for coming home unable to forget. We honor and salute all those, emotional, who are currently serving and who have served in the American Armed Forces. We humbly remember those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom and the families at home who love and support them. Thank you for your service, and thank you to Fort William Henry for having that beautiful dedication on the wall and for this exhibit. This is what it's all about. How awesome. Mention how much I love this place. Tickets cost?
It's 53 for 2 of us.
53 for 2 of us, but they did say, did we go in there?
Yeah. That's the bottom of the thing.
They did say that they're good for 2 days, so if we had been here an additional day, you could always come back in, which is nice to know for the future. All right, keeping the old school theme alive. They still sell little toy guns. My boys loved those when they were nice. Well done. Good quality stuff. This one's kind of cool too. Randomly have a statue of an English Springer Spaniel, and it looks like my mom's dog Lulu. Weird. It's like an old guy shirt here. It's got a hog on it, cruising Lake George, and a fish. This must be the shirts that dad bods go into. Plushies for the kids. Oh, they actually sell these prints. That is neato. There is a member of the Black Watch. Love the glassware. There's some retro funky for you. This be Denix brand reproduction. Denix is a company that does really good. Noah has a couple of their, he's got like a Revolutionary War and a World War I rifle, I think. But they do really nice, accurate reproduction firearms. It's really reasonably priced. This is $8.95 for this cool, funky. It's a good iced tea glass right there. Fantastic array of books. This one here, okay, you guys want a book suggestion? Henry Knox's Noble Train by William Hazelgrove. Excellent. Excellent read. I have James Fenimore's Last of the Mohicans. Classic. It's over here. Many I recognize, some really good ones here. Cool, it's like the old retro travel poster. How many times in this vlog have I said retro? Okay. When Noah was little, we went all across the country. I kid you not, we had to stop at this place in Fredericksburg, Virginia one time because he needed a certain set of plastic military guys. And when we moved from Washington to New Hampshire, we found so many plastic army men I could have opened my own shop. They still have cap guns and slingshots and all that fun stuff. Oh, this place is so great. I wish that this was on a shirt. Treat coming for you guys.
Oh, that's a funny looking device.
It is, right? It's a time capsule. So I was just telling my people about...
Your people.
My
You're
people.
from another planet.
Kind of.
Oh.
Basically.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, we've been waiting.
So, and I do come through a long line of Clan Campbell, which...
Oh, no.
I mean, you can trace those roots of that Black Watch tartan back, too.
Of course you can.
It's an official clan tartan, after all.
It is.
It is.
And in fact, they were Menzies, or as it's pronounced in Scotland, Mingus, who were members of this regiment, and that is my last name, which is why I chose
Wonderful.
to be a member
Awesome.
of yes.
Okay, so you've got your Skene
No, that would
Dirk.
that would
Dirk.
Be, Dirk. Skene would be in
Down
the sock,
there.
but you don't
Yeah,
have one.
you don't
Yes.
have one. That's just your Dirk.
Right, and,
You've got your broadside,
got Bob's footer, yes, and
your sporin,
yes.
hose.
Right.
What are you missing?
I should be wearing the Philip Moore, not
Yes,
the big,
the great
but,
kilt.
But they did cut them down later this year.
Yeah.
1758. They would carry them. Those would be carried. The rest would be carried in the wagons for use as a blanket. And then, of course, I would have a musket, shorter than the standard British musket. Because the average Scotsman was 5'2", who joined this regiment.
Which is interesting because Scotsmen tend to be a little more vertical than that.
You're right. No, the diet was very. You know, this was the time of the clearances. This is the time of the yes, and so a lot of very poorly fed Scots, and so 5'2", and since there was a muzzle loader, they couldn't reach to load very quickly. So we got a shorter musket.
Yeah. And this lovely feather sticking out of your bonny hat.
It's bear skin, or it's supposed to be.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, it's really a horsehair, but we tell.
Okay. Yes.
The soldiers were told it's bear skin.
Okay.
Right, and and by the American Revolution, the men would be wearing either a different bonnet or the grenadier cap, which was bear skin, not as big as the ones they changed into the garden. John Stark saved this fort in 1757, March. And of course, he goes on to other things in the American Revolution.
He sure does.
Right. Now, I don't know if your travels take you that way, but the Saratoga Battlefield, there's a piece of New Hampshire granite on the end of the American lines there. Because more New Hampshire men died at Saratoga than from any other colony.
Yeah.
Because they did the heart of the fighting.
Yeah.
And a gentleman named Alexander Campbell, and a major and a Captain Silly. Very fascinating.
There was a lot of Scots against Scots at Saratoga too.
Yes.
Poor Simon Fraser.
Right, yes. Yes.
That's a couple years down the road from now.
He's buried. He lived after the Revolution down in the Skene Valley. I was asking directions from a couple of old gents outside the VA. They were sitting there and with their veterans hats on. He said, I'm looking for the house that Timothy Murphy lived in. And one guy says that clearly this was a shtick that they went through anytime a tourist asked this particular question. Timothy Murphy, does that name ring a bell with you? Oh, you mean the fella who won the American Revolution with one shot?
Well, and in a crazy twist of fate, this guy here, his grandfather was also one of Morgan's riflemen.
Oh, really?
His name was John Crowdy, and after him there was about 10 John Crowdys, including his cousin who is still with us, but he was in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
So, long legacy.
Wow, I guess so.
Yeah. So, and he had some, he's a descendant from a few people that fought in the Revolutionary War, and some Scotsmen, some Irishmen, but yeah.
Yeah, there were, on my mom's side, there were Knickerbockers at Saratoga, and there were Ecklers at Oriskany.
Oh.
Yep. Alrighty. A couple of busy days.
It was.
Yes.
But what a fun
you
time.
You obviously know your history. I'm very impressed.
I certainly try. Yeah.
Very well done.
Thank you. What a fantastic experience, and everybody was so nice and loving history and no weirdness there. Just presenting the stories for what they are. What a breath of fresh air. Wonderful. Like some of the best interactions I've had with people for a long time, like at a historic site / museum. Absolutely wonderful. We ended up, before we met the gentleman from the Black Watch, we bought, remember I showed you that glasser, we bought one of the glasses with the Highland Scott, Fort William Henry on one side, Scottish soldier on the other side. And then all of a sudden, he walked out and I was like, wait a minute.
the vessel.
Kind of funny, that worked out perfect. Oh yeah, there's a boat. We spent so much time at the fort that I don't know that we're gonna have time to do much else in this town, but we're gonna move on because there is a venture elsewhere ahead. All right, so we walk back over and talk to the boat people, and there's not another one leaving for another hour. Let's look at the village of Lake George. People here are really friendly. You know, it's so interesting as I'm walking and looking across the water, such large homes. Might even call them mansions, the water side, and you know, you wouldn't necessarily know it by walking around here. It's not like Portsmouth in New Hampshire, where there's beautiful homes and kind of fancy stores and restaurants to go along with it. Again, it's just that interesting dichotomy between the two. Somebody told us that the locals don't really come into the village and that this is more for the tourists, and that the locals just stay in their vacation homes and kind of do their thing and then go outside of town. So that could explain some of it. We are at the battlefield now, and there's these awesome markers. Some have memorials like this beauty, and some are just smaller plaques. But this area right down here on the other side where the boats are along the water, part of the actual battlefield. And here you can see 1755 colonial army of 3,000 American provincials and 200 Native Americans commanded by William Johnson camped on this location in prep for an advancement against the French fortress St. Frederick at Crown Point on Lake Champlain. On September 8th, we need to go to Crown Point too. A French force came, barricaded a crude barrier for nearly 5 hours. The battle raged until finally, with heavy casualties on both sides, the French retreated. Johnson's victory established the northernmost limit of British control in the region at the time. And we found out that there's no parking right by these. It's not like some battlefields where you can just park and go see something. So he is kind of driving around while I capture these things. I just didn't want to miss this real quick before we move on from town. Definitely noteworthy. I've always thought that this is an absolutely beautiful memorial. It says Battle of Lake George, September 8th, 1755. So you can see there's tons of trails and things, and you could make a whole other trip out of walking the battlefield. We're just going to briefly take a peek-see before we head on out. We still have a lot to do today. I didn't want to miss this. Lots of bugs, and I don't want to get ticks or anything like that. So I'm going to kind of stay on the path. We'll see what's over here. By the way, it's almost 80 degrees out. He's illegally parked, so I'm going to quickly come over here and see. Okay, memory of a historian. Somebody going to erect a monument for me one day. You guys really don't need to do that. Oh, he's illegally parked, so he moved on a little bit. I don't know. Oh, here's a plaque down here. Just have to go quickly. How pretty. What does this say? Ah, glad I came over here. Fort George during the Revolution. Barricades used the fort as a supply depot. I can see Henry Knox's noble artillery right there. Henry Knox, epic journey to transport cannons from Fort Ti to Boston involved a voyage on Lake George and a stopover at Fort George. In December 1775, the British occupied Fort George. In 1777, establishing a supply depot on Diamond Island, which an American naval force unsuccessfully attacked in September. The British departed from Lake George following their surrender at Saratoga in October 1777, but British forces later overwhelmed the American garrison at Fort George in 1780 and burnt the fort. But hey, Henry Knox schlepped here. Okay, so this is to Father Isaac Otis, French missionary and explorer that we learned about earlier in the fort. I see Caleb coming. He must have parked somewhere. That's a little bit of a creepy statue. If I told you guys that I have statue phobia, that's a real thing. I don't like big, imposing figures. I don't know why. They just, ooh, that creeps me out. He was an interesting person, though. He converted a lot of the native population to Catholicism, got his fingers cut off, was sent away. Then later on another adventure, he ran into the people that did that to him, and so they beat him. And they were like, you again? Stop converting natives to Catholicism. But he was a missionary, and in that spirit he wouldn't stop. So he kept going and carried out his mission. Definitely a man of faith. Gotta give him that. Being here with the town a little bit in the distance and the water in the mountains, it's actually easy to imagine this as a battlefield. Albeit a very lovely one, all things considered. And it's amazing because so many important things happened here. You got French anymore, you got Rev War, you got founding fathers and generals stopping through, Catholic priests, prisoners, men, women, children, people camping out, building forts. This is a hub of activity. Now it's just a beautiful park, battlefield with trails. We can travel here. It always cracks me up. You know, I'm a little bit warm right now, but it's nothing compared to the physical pain people went through then and the sacrifice. We traveled here in a modern vehicle. I didn't have to walk or take a horse. We have air conditioning in our car, GPS. It's just wild to think about. I'm assuming it's closed. This signage in front of the visitor center looks brand spanking new. Welcome to Lake George Battlefield Park. The Battlefield Park has the distinction of being one of the longest continuously operated military sites in American history. Think about that for a second. From 1755 to 1780, the fate of our continent was settled with blood, courage, and troops stationed here. That's what I was just saying. This is amazing stuff. Struggle between the English and the French empires, later the pursuit of independence for the American colonies during the Rev War. Lake George Battlefield Park is truly hallowed ground. Speaking of hallowed ground, when we were at Fort William Henry, you can definitely get a sense of loss and sadness there. We talked to a guy who said, yeah, a lot of women come here and they say that they can feel like mother sorrow. I thought that was really interesting. I'm not being like woo-woo and spoopy or anything, but there's definitely a vibe there. And, you know, I do think in some ways the ground kind of cries out somewhat. There was a vibe of weirdness, even though it was peaceful and beautiful and the fort is cool. You can tell that it was like a lot of other battlefields or places that you go. You can tell that there was anguish. The Visitor Center and Park offer incredible insight into the turbulent period in our shared history. All right.
It reopens May 23rd.
Okay, so it's just closed for the season, May 23rd. So it's going to open right for Memorial Day pretty soon. And here is Mohawk Warrior, Fort George Bastion, burial site of 4 unknown soldiers, the monument I took you to for Major Johnson and the Mohawk Sachem, King Hendrick, 1755, and the Father Gorges statue, just to give you guys an idea. Yeah, definitely gonna have to come back again and again, ride one of those boats and take in more of the battlefield. Log Colony Motel. There's the Seven Dwarfs Hotel. There's a Tiki Hotel.
There's more coming up here.
I just can't emphasize enough. There is a lot of kitschy throwback stuff. Americana, retro, all those things. Pirate Cove mini golf. Every good tourist town has one of those. The last time I played Pirate Cove mini golf was in Virginia, Williamsburg.
Do you need to go to Gift World?
Oh my gosh.
Do you need to go in there?
No.
Are you sure?
Imagine the junk. Imagine the junk.
Next to Goonie Miniature Golf.
That's kind of amazing though. Look at that. Oh, we gotta come back. This place is too fun. I was reading that there's also like a dino world thing where you walk through and there's like animatronic dinosaurs. I guess it used to be a different like themed thing. Look at that. They've got the Humpty Dumpty like Enchanted Forest in Oregon.
The dino thing is up here.
The dino thing's up here. It's a really nasty looking Best Western. Some of these places are really, really run down and nasty looking.
But it's pet friendly.
Pet friendly, but do they count bed bugs as pets? Because I'm thinking that's what it means by the looks of it. I mean, it was bad. It used to be like a Wild West thing, and now there's Dino Land.
There's that one.
There's an old defunct theme park behind us.
Bigfoot.
Themed campground. Oh my gosh. What I mean? They have a gemstone mining thing. They have a teepee right here. Look at this. How great is that? With the leather outlet. Oh yeah. And they have a giant Native American gentleman outside. Let's go say hi to him first. Boy, it's hot out here. That is rad. Look at him. Standing there, watching over the entrance to Lake George. Oh yeah. And for reference, so you guys know, this highway is called Route 9. Oh my gosh, mini Tonkas. The owner in there, super nice guy, told us that he has had this business for a really long time. Everyone thought he was crazy when he opened a leather store in upstate New York. But he's kind of like a well-known guy around here for what he does. And they kind of sell a little bit of everything. I almost bought a pair of mini Tonkas, but I don't know if I want to get the ones that they had that were my size that fit good were suede. I might keep looking to see, because suede is just really hot. Because I think I'd mostly wear them in the spring and summer. And I don't know about wearing suede in the summer. It can get weird, so I'm gonna keep looking and seeing what's out there. But I do want a pair of mini Tonkas eventually. Arrived at the next destination. Yesterday I told you the sad and interesting tale of Duncan Campbell and of poor Jane McCrea. And here is Union Cemetery in Fort Edward, New York, where both of them are buried. A while since I've been here. It's so interesting to me that these two are buried side by side. Of course, she was murdered in the area on her way to Fort Ti. And his tale is the tale of Fort Ticonderoga. And they are both Scottish individuals, so their stories are intertwined. Here comes Kay, flags in hand. A refresher on Duncan Campbell. And this is reiterating what I told you yesterday on location from Fort Ticonderoga. One evening, Duncan Campbell, Laird of Inverway, was disturbed by a knock on his door. At such a late hour, Duncan was surprised to confront a desperate Highlander seeking refuge. He had killed a man, and Duncan swore by his dirk that he would protect him according to ancient customs of the Highland. I told you, a Scotsman does not go back on his word. A short time later, Duncan was again disturbed by a knock on the door, and upon opening, learned that his cousin was dead. A posse was searching for the man who had killed him, and Duncan, swearing no knowledge of the murderer, bolted the door and just went to bed. During the late hour, his cousin's ghost visited his bedchamber and said to him, Inverway, Inverway, blood has been shed, shield not the murderer. On the following morning, Duncan removed his visitor to a nearby cave, lest he be discovered, giving the culprit shelter. Subsequently, the ghost returned to Duncan in his sleep twice more on the final visit. Farewell, Inverway. Farewell till we meet at Ticonderoga. Years later, Duncan was in North America with his regiment of the Black Watch and learned that he would command his soldiers in an attack on Fort Ticonderoga. He then experienced a foreboding of his own death as he recalled the visit of his cousin's ghost. On July 8th, 1758, he was wounded at Ticonderoga, removed to Fort Edward, died of his wounds 9 days later. He is buried here at the Union Cemetery, and the Clan Campbell Society put this up. Thank you very much. And here is Inverway House. You can see they put up in the bridge. Old Inverway House, where it all went down. A beautiful, beautiful place in the world. Here lies the body of Duncan Campbell of Inverway, Esquire, Major to the Old Highland Regiment, age 55, who died 17th of July, 1758, of the wounds he received in the attack on the retrenchments of Ticonderoga, or Carry-on, the 8th of July, 1758. And there's poor, sweet Jane McCrea. Jane McCrea was a Fort Edward area resident in 1777 during the Saratoga campaign. With the approach of the British Army, Jane's brother, Colonel John McCrea, a supporter of the Patriot cause, remember, some of her brothers were, some weren't, evacuated his farm on the west bank of the Hudson River, located on West River Road in the town of Moreau. Unbeknownst to the family, Jane stayed behind to meet her fiancé, David Jones, a lieutenant in a loyalist militia, serving with Burgoyne's regulars. Jane went to the house of Sarah McNeil, grandmother of her friend Polly Hunter. On July 27th, Jane and Sarah traveled up to Fort Edward Hill to meet up with the British Army. Spotting a group of Native Americans led by Chief Duluth, the ladies ran back to the McNeil house to hide. The Indians found Sarah and Jane and pulled them out of their cellar. Jane was placed on a horse and Sarah was forced to walk as she was physically unable to ride. On the way, the British Army, a second group of Native Americans led by Chief Leloup, confronted Duluth and tried to take Jane. A struggle ensued, and at least one shot was fired, killing Jane. The Indians scalped Jane, returned the British Army camp. Lieutenant Jones recognized the scalp and found Jane's body near the site of the current Fort Edward High School. He buried Jane along the east bank of the Hudson River, resigned his commission, moving to Canada, where he died a few years later. After her death, many claim that the atrocity spurred area volunteers to fight the Patriot Army and help turn the tide of the revolution with their support at the Battle of Saratoga. That is an excellent case to be made, and I've heard that as well. Sometimes one person's demise or sad story starts a ripple effect of things that cause more actions to take place, and in some cases it's for the greater good. Sad that this young woman had to die for it. And at the end of the 19th century, the bounty and patriotism of public-spirited citizens, together with the contributions from the school children of Fort Edward and Sandy Hill, erected a high and substantial iron fence, see there, around her grave to protect the stone from further desecration by modern, I'm not kidding, Goths and Vandals. That is what it says. But I don't know a single person that would desecrate a grave like that. Maybe 100 years ago. Given the book that comes out of, that phrase, that this whole thing is quoted, was written in 1903. And this seal was used to mark many Jane McCrea souvenirs, this imagery here. So here are the final resting places of both Jane McCrea and her friend, Sarah Gordon, Fraser Campbell McNeil. My goodness. I don't think I've ever heard, or I'd be hard pressed to find a more Scottish name than Sarah Gordon Fraser Campbell McNeil. That's a doozy. Here rest the remains of Jane McCrea, age 17, made captive and murdered by a band of Indians while on a visit to a relative. To commemorate one of the most thrilling incidents in the annals of American Revolution, to know justice to the fame of the gallant British officer to whom she was affianced, and a simple tribute to the memory of the departed, this stone is erected by her niece, Sarah Hannah Payne, 1852. Amazing the way that these two are forever intertwined in their final resting places here together in Fort Edward, New York. It's really an amazing thing, and I often say that the truth is stranger than fiction, and in history that's often the case, whether it's a ghost story and a tale with a legend attached to it, or the fate of an innocent young girl at the wrong place at the wrong time. History is alive and real, waiting to explore it. It can be found all across this country. Kay said that he found something interesting down here.
58.
Oh, I love that.
Look how big it is, but it's like plain.
Oh, see, I get it. Wanting people to go back and visit you and be like, whoa, that is really impressive. Think about this. He was born in 1865 and died in 1958. Think about the changes in this country. Frederick B. Richards, and he went old school with a colonial style headstone, but he died in 1958. That is amazing. You can see that there is a lot of funky headstones in here. Guy William Lee, he was only 36. Honolulu, Sandwich Islands, where he had resided for over 10 years as Chancellor and Chief Justice of the Hawaiian Nation. Okay, that seems like really important. Speaking of Hawaii, I've been thinking about Hawaii a lot. It's been a long time since I've been. Kay's never been. That would be so fun. It's just really far from this coast. If I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna go to Tokyo, another place I've always wanted to go.
It's a long ways to bring back his body.
Anyways, that is pretty amazing. And there must have been something up there and it broke off in a storm or something. But a lot of these just kind of obelisks just go like, huh. Interesting. I also named Lee, apparently died in the Civil War. Battle Creek, Michigan? September 30th, 1862. Same surname, all these Lees here. Stephen Lee. Newburyport, Mass. These people got around, man. That's by us. A lot of these people did not die old enough. That is one thing that people's lives were cut short very often back in the day. But I do love a good cemetery, and to be honest, kind of the creepier the better. I still think that my favorite one is the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in New York, where Washington Irving is buried. And we did not make it this fall like I hoped to, but I will definitely bring you guys. That is another one of our favorite places, just outside of New York City, the Sleepy Hollow, Irvington area. A lot of Rev War history there, and I love Washington Irving, who of course wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and the old Dutch church is there in the cemetery is amazing and creepy and cool in all the best ways. But okay, let's journey on. Just like that, we're in farmland, and this is still New York, folks. A lot of New York farmland, mountains, rivers, streams. Again, not the city. And when we were at Lake George, we were 3.5 hours from New York City, so no closer than we are when we're at our own home. So we're in Whitehall, New York, and we always see this creepy place from the bottom of the hill. So we decided today to drive up and get a closer look at this creepy Gothic Victorian mansion, and that road we just came up was absolutely terrifying. Oh my gosh. Can't believe that's not a one-way. Yeah, I mean, we always see this place, and I should go back down to town and show you what it looks like from down below, because it is crazy. The view is insane. But we always look at this place because Whitehall's kind of a drive-through town. I think we go through here and we go to Saratoga too, don't we?
Yeah, we go by.
Whitehall, just a little historic rural New York town. But this place is very ominous looking, and we're like, what the heck, let's go up and take a look. So we're not going to go in or anything like that, but I wanted to get close to it to show you. And this says Skene Manor, placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it was built and owned by a local judge named Joseph Potter. That is really all that I know about it, other than the fact that it's super creepy and has a beautiful view. Look how imposing it is. And I'm telling you, from down below on the hill, you look at it and you're like, what is that? I mean, it's very, sticks out like a sore thumb. You guys see what I mean? And you can see it from everywhere in town, but look at it up there on the hill. That's where we just were. Very noticeable as you're coming around. So you're like, what the heck is that? And this is part of the Champlain lock system. You can see some locks over there. We're also near the Erie Canal.
Through Albany, though.
Yeah, we go that way more. I think, is that when we go to Saratoga? We won't be going by that today. Oh, on the way to Cooperstown, we definitely see it. Yeah, there's different ways. And there were 3 ways we could have started heading towards New Hampshire today, and just kind of went with this way. And we're going to go through some different parts of Vermont. So it's exciting. The day is still young. Think of how much we've already done today, and we still have a lot to do. He keeps stopping and getting distracted because there's cool stuff to see. A little further down the road from where we just were, here is the hull of the USS Ticonderoga from 1812. And couldn't have planned this better myself. Also, check out this view of Skene Manor. Creepy. And a hull of a ship named after Fort Ti, War of 1812 era. How amazing is that? Saying that it did in fact sink during the War of 1812. It sunk in 1814, Battle of Plattsburgh, and they got it up out of the water in 1958. 1 mile from the Vermont border. Still no Amish, and they actually are not on the Vermont side, which is always weird because you would think Vermont, but I think it's because Vermont's expensive, and this part of New York is a little less expensive for them to build on and live in. What you want to look for too for finding Amish people's homes is like places that have laundry lines out, no modern vehicles in the driveway, no power ran to it, obviously. No satellite
Buggy
dishes.
parked out front.
Yeah, obviously if a buggy is parked out front, you're solid. But so far, no sightings. So no Amish today, but welcome back to New England. Welcome to Vermont. We've been talking lately too about how bad we want to go back to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's just really pretty and nice, and there's cool stuff to do there. So eventually, I promise you guys will see buggies. Welcome to Hubbardton, Vermont. I am a completionist, and I couldn't be in the area without stopping and showing you the place that saw the only Revolutionary War battle in Vermont. And here we are. We went down this crazy farm road to get here. Little ways out of the way, but I thought, you know what? Let's do it. It was under the command of Major General Arthur St. Clair as he was leaving Lake Champlain of forts at Mount Independence and Ticonderoga. So there you go. About 1,200 men with Seth Warner and Ebenezer Francis engaged British forces as they were attempting to carry out General John Burgoyne, Gentleman Johnny. And they wanted to split New England off from the rest of the states. It was the first time Burgoyne met resistance with American soldiers, and the Americans' success ensured the safety going forward. We delayed them here. We engaged them. There was 1,100 Americans, 850 British, 180 Germans. 27% of all participating would be wounded in this battle. Just pulling in that connection again, Major General Arthur St. Clair was the last American commander at Fort Ticonderoga. So this is post-Benedict Arnold having command. And in 1777, same year as the battles of Saratoga, the memorial, and it says right on there, the only battle fought in Vermont during the Revolution. The Battle of Hubbardton, only battlefield on Vermont soil. Here on July 7th, 1777, successful rearguard action by Colonel Seth Warner, he was amazing, of Vermont. Massachusetts and New Hampshire troops ended British pursuit under General Fraser. Oh, well, his pursuit would really end at Saratoga. General St. Clair's American Army, retreating from Fort Ticonderoga and Mount Independence, was saved to fight again near Bennington and Saratoga. Burgoyne's 1777 drive to divide the colonies, first resisted at Hubbardton, ended in defeat at Saratoga. And that is the next thing I was going to tell you, so that's a perfect segue. The three battles here, Hubbardton, Saratoga, and Bennington, all very much connected. And at some point we will take you to Bennington, which the memorial to the Battle of Bennington, it is in Vermont, but it was actually fought in New York, a few miles down the road from where the monument in Vermont is. So a lot of people get confused and think Bennington was Vermont. It was not. However, Hubbardton right here, it's definitely Vermont, and it's definitely the only actual Revolutionary War battle happened in this state. And Saratoga, of course, is New York, about an hour south from Lake George, where we just were. And it was kind of ongoing. I mean, Saratoga, it went months long. It was divided up into timeline. There was a period where fighting sort of stopped and people reorganized, and then it continued, and it actually moved far out. There's connections to battles and forts out in western New York as well, and that is another area that we like to go and that I will take you guys to soon. And as of course, as anniversaries and things like that strike, that is another thing to look forward to. But I always tell people, you know, Saratoga, it's not just like the Battle of Saratoga. It was ongoing. It was all connected. You have strategic movement going on, connecting all of them. So like this, Hubbardton was very strategic, and you know, the British wanted New England to be cut off, and we were like, no. So it was about pushing them away and making sure that the battle and the conflict was contained. And it was successful. So huzzah to those men, July 7th, 1777. Again, look how beautiful it is out today. Stopped off in Rutland. Seems like a good place to wrap things up. This woman settled the local area. She was a Revolutionary spy and supported the Green Mountain Boys, who of course were led by Ethan Allen as part of the story that we've been following the last couple of days. She came face to face with the spy, a Tory or British spy in the area, who knew that she was a patriot-leaning lady and tried to get information from her. She wouldn't give up any information on the Green Mountain Boys whatsoever. So she sends her son, as depicted right there, with a secret message, and she puts it on a page of her Bible. She sends him to Fort Ticonderoga and instructs him to make sure that Ethan Allen sees this. And the information basically is informing on the Tory spy that had cornered her and wanted information from her that she wouldn't give up. So she was letting Ethan Allen know who these folks were, who this guy was with, and where he could be nabbed. It worked, and those guys were imprisoned until the end of the war, and she is a hero. I like to think that her and I would have been good friends, and I like to think that my sons would do the same thing. I'm sure they would. So, Anne's story, your story's a good one. Thanks again so much, you guys, for watching. Like Patrick Henry, of course, I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. The past is alive, it's real, and it's all over this beautiful country. Liking, sharing, subscribing, always appreciated. We will see you soon with so much adventure ahead, a lot of things planned. Take care, guys.